The glass doors slid open with a whisper, and Maya Carter stepped into the marble lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel, carrying nothing but a worn duffel bag in her 7-year-old son's hand. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. She'd been traveling for 16 hours. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. Her jeans had a coffee stain from the airport. Her son, Jordan, pressed against her leg, exhausted, his backpack sliding off one shoulder. The lobby smelled like lavender and money. Crystal chandeliers threw light across surfaces, so clean they looked wet. Maya approached the front desk, where a young woman in a crisp uniform stood typing on a computer, her nails clicking against the keys like tiny hammers. Maya cleared her throat. The woman didn't look up. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice soft but clear. The receptionist's eyes flicked up for half a second, then back down. "One moment," she said, her tone flat, mechanical. But the moment stretched. 10 seconds. 20. Maya shifted her weight. Jordan tugged her sleeve. "Mom, I'm tired," he whispered. Maya squeezed his hand. "I know, baby. Just a few more minutes." The receptionist finally looked up, and her gaze traveled from Maya's face down to her sneakers, then over to Jordan's rumpled t-shirt. Something changed in her expression. Not quite disgust, more like dismissal, like she'd already decided this conversation wasn't worth her time. "How can I help you?" she asked, the question landing like a door closing. "I need a room," Maya said. "Just for tonight. One bed is fine." The receptionist's lips pressed together. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I don't. But I saw online that you have availability." Before we continue this story, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Type your country in the comments below. I love seeing where our community is tuning in from. Whether you're in the United States, the UK, Nigeria, Canada, India, South Africa, or anywhere else in the world, drop your country down there. And if this story already has you hooked, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Now let's get back to Maya. The receptionist tapped her keyboard, her eyes scanning the screen. "I'm sorry," she said, though her voice carried no apology. "We're fully booked." Maya blinked. "Fully booked?" The website said. "The website isn't always updated in real time." The receptionist's tone sharpened. "We're a luxury hotel. We require reservations, especially during peak season." "It's Tuesday night in March," Maya said quietly. "What peak season?" The woman's jaw tightened. A man in a dark suit appeared from a door behind the desk. His name tag read Marcus Delgado, Guest Services Manager. He had the kind of face that looked like it smiled often, but right now it wasn't smiling. He glanced at Maya, then at the receptionist, then back at Maya. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. "No problem," the receptionist said quickly. "I was just explaining that we're fully booked." Marcus's eyes lingered on Maya's duffel bag, on Jordan's tired face, on the coffee stain. "I see," he said slowly. "Ma'am, the Grand Meridian maintains certain standards. We cater to a very specific clientele. I'm sure you understand." Maya's stomach dropped. She understood perfectly. She'd understood the moment the receptionist's eyes had traveled over her clothes. "I can pay," Maya said, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her chest. "I have a credit card. I just need one night." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure you do. But as my colleague explained, we're fully booked. I can recommend some budget-friendly options a few blocks away. There's a motel." "I don't want a motel." Maya's voice was quiet, but something in it made Marcus pause. "I want to stay here." "Well, that's not possible tonight." Marcus's smile faded. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have guests to attend to." Jordan looked up at his mother. "Mom?" His voice was small, confused. He didn't understand why they couldn't just get a room, why this man was looking at them like they didn't belong. Maya's hand tightened around his. She felt the exhaustion in her bones, the weight of the last 16 hours, the last 6 months, the last 7 years of fighting to prove she was enough. She felt something else too, something cold and sharp and patient. She looked at Marcus Delgado. She looked at the receptionist. She looked at the two bellhops standing by the luggage carts, watching the scene with barely concealed amusement. She looked at the concierge pretending to organize brochures while listening to every word. Okay, Maya said softly. She pulled out her phone. Just give me a moment. Marcus frowned. Ma'am, making a scene won't change. I'm not making a scene, Maya said, her thumb already moving across the screen. I'm making a phone call. She pressed the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, crisp and professional. Grand Meridian Corporate, this is Amanda. Amanda, it's Maya Carter. I need you to pull up the current occupancy report for the flagship property, right now. Marcus's expression shifted, just slightly, just enough. The receptionist stopped typing. Maya kept her eyes on Marcus as she listened to Amanda on the other end. Uh-huh, Maya said. 42%. That's what I thought. And what's our policy on refusing service based on appearance profiling? She paused. Right. Immediate termination. That's what I thought too. Marcus took a step forward. I'm sorry, who are you calling? Maya lowered the phone, but didn't end the call. I'm calling corporate, she said simply, because I'm Maya Carter. I own this hotel. I own all 17 Grand Meridian properties across the country, and you just denied me a room in my own building. The lobby went silent, not the peaceful silence of luxury, the shocked silence of a world tilting off its axis. The receptionist's face drained of color. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Jordan looked up at his mother with wide eyes. You own this place? He whispered. Maya nodded. Yeah, baby, I do. But she didn't move. Not yet. She wanted them to sit in this moment, to feel the weight of their mistake. She'd built this empire from nothing, from a single motel she'd bought with her last dollar and a dream most people called impossible. She'd worked overnight shifts while pregnant. She'd scrubbed toilets and changed sheets and learned every corner of the hospitality business from the ground up. She'd reinvested every profit. She'd gone without sleep, without comfort, without the luxury of being seen as anything other than a young single mother who didn't know her place. And she'd done it anyway. She'd built something that mattered, something that employed hundreds of people, something that stood for dignity and service, and the radical idea that every person who walked through those doors deserved respect. And these people, her employees, had just proven they'd forgotten that. Marcus found his voice first. Ms. Carter, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, Maya said, her voice still quiet, still calm. Because you weren't looking at me. You were looking at my clothes, my bag, my tired son. You decided I didn't belong here based on a coffee stain and some sneakers. You decided I couldn't afford this place without ever asking my name or checking your actual inventory. I apologize, Marcus started, but Maya held up a hand. Don't apologize to me, she said. Apologize to every single person you've ever judged like this. Every mother who came here exhausted. Every traveler who didn't look the part. Every person who walked through those doors hoping for kindness and got contempt instead. She looked at the receptionist. What's your name? The woman's voice came out as a whisper. Vanessa. Vanessa, did you see any reservations under the name Carter when you checked the system? Vanessa's hands trembled as they moved over the keyboard. Her face went from pale to gray. Yes, she breathed. Yes, there's a reservation. Presidential suite, indefinite stay. I didn't see it. You didn't look, Maya finished, because you'd already decided I wasn't worth the effort. Jordan tugged Maya's hand again. Can we go to the room now, Mom? His voice was so innocent, so trusting. He didn't understand the full weight of what had just happened. He just wanted to sleep. Maya's chest ached. Soon, baby, she said. She looked at Marcus. How long have you been the guest services manager? 3 years, Marcus said, his voice hollow. And in those 3 years, how many times have you made assumptions about guests based on their appearance? Marcus didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Maya pulled her phone back up. Amanda, are you still there? She listened. Yes, I need you to send someone from HR to the flagship property immediately. We're going to need to conduct a full review of front desk operations and customer service protocols. She paused. And I need you to prepare termination paperwork for Marcus Delgado and Vanessa. She looked at the receptionist. What's your last name? Stevens, Vanessa whispered, tears now streaming down her face. Vanessa Stevens. Effective immediately. Maya's voice didn't waver. This wasn't anger. This was consequence. This was the protection of every future guest who deserved better. I also want interviews scheduled with every employee who was present in this lobby in the last 15 minutes. I want to know who else saw this happening and said nothing. The bellhops who'd been smirking earlier suddenly looked very interested in the floor. The concierge had gone completely still, a deer sensing a predator. Maya ended the call. She looked around the lobby, at the beautiful space she'd designed herself, at the chandelier she'd chosen because it reminded her of stars, at the marble she'd sourced from a small quarry in Vermont because she'd wanted to support American workers. She looked at the mission statement engraved on a brass plaque near the entrance. Every guest is family. Every moment is sacred. Every person deserves dignity. She'd written those words herself 5 years ago, on a night when she'd been so tired she could barely think straight, when Jordan had been just a toddler and the weight of single motherhood and building an empire had nearly crushed her. She'd written them because she'd needed to remember why she was doing this, why it mattered, and today those words meant nothing to her own staff. Here's what's going to happen, Maya said, her voice carrying across the lobby now, clear and authoritative. Marcus, Vanessa, you're going to collect your things and leave. HR will contact you about final paychecks and exit interviews. You're done here. She turned to the bellhops. You two. Names. Trevor, one stammered, and this is Ryan. Trevor and Ryan, you thought this was funny. You thought watching someone get humiliated was entertainment. You're on suspension pending review. If I find out you've behaved this way with other guests, you're gone too. She looked at the concierge. You have a choice right now. You can tell me the truth about how often this happens, or you can pretend this was an isolated incident, and I'll assume you're part of the problem. The concierge, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and intelligent eyes, stepped forward. Her hands were clasped in front of her, but her voice was steady. Ms. Carter, my name is Patricia. I've worked here for 8 months. I've seen this happen 3 times. Twice with families who looked like they couldn't afford the rates. Once with a man who had a wheelchair. I didn't speak up. I told myself it wasn't my place. I was wrong. I should have said something. I should have done something. Maya studied her. Patricia met her gaze without flinching. There was shame there, yes, but also honesty, also courage. Patricia, thank you for your honesty. You're not fired, but you're going to be part of the solution. I'm putting you in charge of a new training program. Every employee, front desk to housekeeping to management, is going to go through sensitivity training. Real training. Not some corporate video they sleep through. Workshops, role-playing, scenarios. You're going to help me build it, and you're going to help me implement it. She paused. Can you do that? Patricia nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Yes, ma'am, I can. Maya turned back to Marcus. He was still standing there frozen, his face a mask of shock and regret. You know what the worst part is? Maya said quietly. You're probably not a bad person. You probably go home and tell yourself you're professional, that you uphold standards, that you're just doing your job. But you forgot the most important standard of all. You forgot to see people as human beings first. You forgot that everyone has a story, that everyone deserves basic respect, that dignity isn't something you earn by looking a certain way or carrying the right bag. It's something every person is born with. Marcus's voice cracked when he spoke. I have a family. I have a mortgage. So do I, Maya said. And I'm raising my son to understand that how you treat people when you think they can't do anything for you, that's who you really are. That's character. You showed me yours today. She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping so only he could hear. You have skills. You have experience. You'll find another job. But I hope you remember this day. I hope you remember what it cost you to judge someone without knowing them. I hope you do better. She stepped back. Security will escort you out. Leave your key cards and name tags at the desk. 2 security guards appeared as if summoned. They must have been watching the whole thing unfold. Marcus removed his name tag with shaking hands. Vanessa was openly sobbing now, fumbling with the pin on her uniform. They both placed their items on the counter and walked toward the exit, flanked by security. The glass doors slid open, then closed, and they were gone, just like that. 9 minutes had passed since Maya first stepped up to that desk. 9 minutes from humiliation to justice. 9 minutes that would change this hotel forever. Maya took a breath. She felt the adrenaline starting to fade, replaced by exhaustion and a deep, bone-tired sadness. She didn't enjoy firing people. She didn't enjoy wielding power like a weapon. But she wouldn't apologize for protecting her standards, for protecting future guests, for teaching her son that some things are worth fighting for. She looked down at Jordan. He was staring at her with something like awe. "That was cool, Mom," he whispered. Maya smiled, the first real smile since she'd entered the lobby. "Come on, baby, let's go to our room." Patricia appeared beside her, holding a keycard. "The presidential suite is ready, Ms. Carter. I'll have your bag sent up immediately." She hesitated. "And ma'am, thank you for staying, for not just walking away." Maya took the keycard. "I built this place to be better than what I just saw. I'm not going to let it become something I'm ashamed of." They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. Jordan leaned against her, his head heavy on her hip. The doors opened to a private hallway, and Maya used the keycard to open the double doors at the end. The suite was exactly as she'd designed it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a living room with soft couches and art she'd personally selected. A bedroom with a bed so big it looked like a cloud. A second bedroom for Jordan, with a bookshelf full of children's books and a telescope pointed at the stars. Jordan ran to his room with a delighted shout. Maya stood at the window, looking out at the city lights, and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The hurt, the anger, the disappointment, the weight of knowing that her dream, her mission, her standards had been betrayed by people she'd trusted to uphold them. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes. She started typing. New policies, mandatory diversity training, anonymous feedback system for guests, monthly reviews of customer service recordings, zero tolerance policy for discrimination, signed by every employee. Her phone buzzed. A text from Amanda at corporate. "HR is on the way. Do you need anything else?" Maya typed back. "I need a meeting with all property managers next week. We're implementing new standards across every location. This doesn't happen again. Not anywhere." Amanda's response was immediate. "Absolutely, I'll set it up." "And Maya, I'm sorry this happened." Maya didn't respond. She set her phone down and walked to Jordan's room. He was already under the covers, the telescope forgotten, his eyes drooping. "Mom," he murmured as she sat on the edge of his bed. "Yeah, baby. Why were those people so mean to us?" Maya brushed the hair back from his forehead. "How do you explain prejudice to a 7-year-old? How do you explain that some people judge you based on surfaces, on assumptions, on fears and biases they don't even know they have?" "Sometimes people forget to look beyond what they can see," she said carefully. "They make decisions based on what someone looks like instead of who they are. It's not right, but it happens." "But you're the boss," Jordan said, confused. "You own the whole hotel." "They didn't know that. And you know what? It shouldn't matter. Even if I wasn't the boss, even if I was just a mom looking for a room, I deserve respect. Every person does. That's the lesson, Jordan. Not that I had power and they didn't recognize it, but that everyone deserves kindness, no matter who they are or what they look like." Jordan thought about this, his child's mind working through the complexity. "So you fired them because they were mean?" "I fired them because they forgot that," Maya said. "Because in this business, in any business, how you treat people matters more than anything else. You can have the fanciest hotel, the best amenities, the most beautiful lobby, but if your staff treats guests like they're less than human, none of it matters. The building is just a building. The service is what makes it special. The humanity is what makes it matter." Jordan nodded sleepily. "I'm glad you're my mom," he whispered. Maya's throat tightened. "I'm glad you're my son." She stayed until his breathing evened out, until she was sure he was asleep. Then she went back to the living room and called her sister. Elena answered on the first ring. "Hey, you made it?" "Yeah, I made it." "You sound exhausted." Maya laughed, but it came out shaky. "I just fired my entire front desk staff." What? Maya told her the whole story, every detail, every word, every moment of humiliation and rage and the cold, necessary justice that followed. When she finished, Elena was quiet for a long moment. Are you okay? She finally asked. I don't know, Maya admitted. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I'm sad that this happened in a place I built specifically to be better than this. But I'm also, I don't know, weirdly grateful that I was the one it happened to, that I had the power to do something about it. Because how many people go through that and have no recourse? How many people get judged and dismissed and turned away, and there's nothing they can do? Too many, Elena said quietly. Way too many. Maya walked to the window again, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. I'm going to fix this, Elena. Not just here. At every property, I'm going to build something so strong, so clear, that this can never happen again. You will, Elena said with absolute certainty, because that's who you are. You don't just build hotels, Maya. You build standards. You build culture. You build proof that success doesn't mean leaving your values behind. They talked for another hour, about everything and nothing, until Maya finally felt steady again. She ended the call and took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away the grime of travel and the tension of the confrontation. She put on comfortable clothes and made herself tea in the suite's kitchenette. She sat on the couch and opened her laptop. She had work to do, policies to draft, training programs to design, a culture to rebuild. But first, she wrote an email to every single employee across all 17 properties. Subject line: Our values are not optional. Dear team, today, something happened that broke my heart. At our flagship property, a guest was denied service based on nothing more than her appearance. A tired mother with her young son was judged, dismissed, and turned away because she didn't look like she belonged. That guest was me. I tell you this not to shame you, but to remind you why we exist. The Grand Meridian was built on a simple promise that every person who walks through our doors will be treated with dignity, respect, and genuine care. That promise is not conditional. It doesn't depend on someone's clothes, their luggage, their accent, or their appearance. It is absolute. If you cannot uphold that promise, you cannot work here. Effective immediately, we are implementing new training programs at every property. Every employee will participate. These won't be generic corporate sessions. They will be real, honest conversations about bias, about judgment, about the power we hold when someone asks us for help. We will also be establishing an anonymous feedback system for guests, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and regular reviews of customer service interactions. This company was built by a single mother who was told she'd never succeed, who was judged and dismissed and underestimated at every turn, who chose to build something different, something better, something that proves success and decency can coexist. I won't let that vision die because we forgot to see people as people first. If today's events make you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort means growth. If they make you angry at me for taking action, I respect that, but I won't apologize for it. And if they make you proud to work for a company that holds itself to a higher standard, then I'm proud to have you on this team. We are not just hotels. We are sanctuaries. We are safe places. We are proof that hospitality means something more than a transaction. Let's act like it. With respect and determination, Maya Carter, founder and CEO, Grand Meridian Hotels. She read it 3 times, then hit send. Within minutes, responses started flooding in. Some supportive, some defensive, some ashamed, some grateful. She read every single one. She would respond to as many as she could. This wasn't just a company. It was a community. And communities need honest conversation, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The night stretched on. Maya worked until her eyes burned, until Jordan woke up once needing water, and she took a break to tuck him back in. She worked until the sky outside started to lighten, until the city began its morning transformation from sleeping to alive. She worked because this mattered. Because standards without enforcement are just pretty words. Because her son was watching, learning what it means to stand for something even when it costs you. By the time the sun rose fully, Maya had drafted 14 new policies, outlined a comprehensive training program, scheduled meetings with all property managers, and sent a memo to the board of directors explaining the situation and her response. She also sent a personal note to Patricia, thanking her for her honesty and officially appointing her as Director of Guest Experience and Inclusivity Training. It was a new role, a necessary role. Her phone rang. It was Amanda again. "Have you slept?" "No, have you?" Amanda laughed. "No, I've been reading the responses to your email. Maya, you've started a revolution." "I've started a conversation," Maya corrected. "The revolution is whether people choose to actually change." 16 managers have already volunteered to pilot the new training program. 11 employees have sent in stories about similar incidents they witnessed and didn't report. 3 have admitted to being complicit. And about 200 have thanked you for standing up for what matters. Maya closed her eyes. "And the rest?" "The rest are quiet, which probably means they're thinking. That's not a bad thing." "No," Maya agreed. "It's not." "Marcus Delgado sent an email," Amanda said carefully. Maya's eyes opened. "What did he say?" "He apologized. Not a defensive apology, a real one. He said he'd spent the whole night thinking about how many times he'd made assumptions about people, how many opportunities he'd missed to be better. He said he knows he can't undo what happened, but he wanted you to know that he heard you, that he'll do better, that he's grateful you taught him something he should have already known." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Send it to me. I want to read it." "Will you respond?" "Maybe. I don't know yet. I need to think about what kind of message that sends." They talked logistics for a while longer, and then Amanda had to go. Maya sat in the quiet suite, watching the city wake up below her, people heading to work, lives being lived, stories unfolding. She thought about Marcus Delgado, about Vanessa Stevens, about the assumption that kindness is weakness and standards are negotiable. She thought about all the times she'd been underestimated, all the rooms she'd been denied, all the moments when people saw a young black single mother and decided she couldn't possibly be who she said she was. She thought about building this empire not despite those moments, but because of them, because she refused to accept that dignity was a luxury, because she'd needed places like the Grand Meridian to exist, and when they didn't, she'd built them herself. Jordan appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Morning, Mom." "Morning, baby. You hungry?" "Starving." Maya ordered room service. When it arrived, delivered by a young man who introduced himself as David and who thanked her profusely for the email, for the new policies, for finally making this place what it's supposed to be, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about yesterday. This was about every day going forward. This was about building something that lasted, something that mattered. They ate breakfast together, Jordan chattering about the telescope and the view and the giant bathtub he'd found in his bathroom. Maya listened, present and grateful. This was why she did it. For him. For the world she wanted him to grow up in. For the example she wanted to set. When breakfast was done, and Jordan was watching cartoons, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of yesterday. She'd been operating on adrenaline and principle, but now the emotional cost came due. She felt the sting of being judged, the humiliation of being denied, the anger at needing to prove herself in a place she owned, the exhaustion of always having to fight for respect that should be freely given. She let herself cry. Not the broken crying of defeat, but the releasing crying of someone who's been holding too much for too long. She cried for every woman who'd been dismissed, every mother who'd been judged, every person who'd been told they didn't belong. And then she dried her eyes, washed her face, and got back to work. Because crying was necessary, but it wasn't enough. Action was what changed things. Consistency was what built new realities. The days that followed were intense. Maya spent a week at the flagship property, personally overseeing the implementation of new policies. She sat in on interviews. She watched training sessions. She talked to housekeepers and bellhops and concierges and managers. She listened to stories she'd never heard before, about discrimination, about bias, about the small cruelties that happened when people forgot their humanity. She also heard stories of kindness, of employees going above and beyond, of moments when the mission statement was lived and breathed. She fired 3 more people. She promoted 5. She restructured entire departments. She brought in outside consultants to run workshops. She made herself available, visible, present. She wanted everyone to know that this wasn't a publicity stunt or a momentary reaction. This was a fundamental shift in how the Grand Meridian operated. Patricia proved to be extraordinary. She designed a training program that was honest, challenging, and transformative. She didn't let people off easy. She made them confront their biases, their assumptions, their complicity in systems that harmed others. And she did it with grace, with wisdom, with the kind of moral authority that can't be faked. By the end of that first month, the culture had shifted. Maya could feel it. In the way employees greeted guests, in the care they took with every interaction, in the conversations happening in break rooms and staff meetings, change was happening. Real change. Not perfect change. There were still missteps, still moments when old habits resurfaced, but there was accountability now. There was awareness. There was a commitment to being better. Maya visited all 17 properties over the next 3 months. She told the story at each one, not to shame anyone, but to illuminate what was at stake. She talked about her journey, about building the company, about the values that mattered to her. She made herself vulnerable. She made herself real. And slowly, property by property, the Grand Meridian transformed. Revenue increased. Guest satisfaction scores soared. Employee retention improved. It turned out that when you treat people with dignity, all people, guests and staff alike, everyone benefits. Who knew? 6 months after that day in the lobby, Maya received a letter. It was handwritten, which was rare enough to catch her attention. It was from Marcus Delgado. "Dear Ms. Carter, I don't expect you to read this, let alone respond, but I needed to write it anyway. 6 months ago, you fired me. It was the worst day of my professional life. It was also the most important. I spent that first week angry at you, at myself, at the unfairness of losing my job for what I told myself was a simple mistake. But the anger didn't last, because underneath it, I knew you were right. I've spent the last 6 months in therapy, working through why I made the assumptions I did, where they came from, how I internalized messages about who matters and who doesn't. It's been hard, painful, humbling. I got a new job at a smaller hotel. I told them what happened in my interview. I told them I was fired for discrimination. I told them what I learned and how I'm different now. They hired me anyway, because they believed in second chances, because they saw someone willing to do the work. I will never forget that day. I will never forget your son's face. I will never forget the quiet dignity in your voice when you told me that everyone deserves respect. You were right about all of it. I'm writing to say thank you, not for the job I lost, but for the person I found. I'm not the same man I was. I'm better. Not perfect. God knows I still catch myself making assumptions, still have to actively choose different, but I'm better. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it, but I wanted you to know that your refusal to accept mediocrity, your insistence on standards that actually mean something, it changed me. It changed my life. Thank you for not letting me stay comfortable in my blindness." Respectfully, Marcus Delgado. Maya read the letter 3 times. She sat with it. She thought about redemption, about growth, about the difference between punishment and accountability. She thought about the fact that her goal had never been to destroy Marcus Delgado. It had been to protect her standards and protect future guests. But maybe there was room for both justice and grace. Maybe they weren't opposites. Maybe they were partners. She wrote back, "Dear Marcus, thank you for your letter. Thank you for doing the work. I accept your apology. Not because I've forgotten what happened, but because I believe people can change. I believe growth is real. I believe that acknowledging our failures is the first step toward becoming who we're meant to be. You're right that you won't forget that day. I won't either. But perhaps we can both carry it differently now. Not as a wound, but as a lesson. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. I hope you continue to choose differently. I hope you continue to see people first. I hope you build a career you're proud of, built on values that matter. And Marcus, thank you for showing my son that accountability doesn't mean destruction, that consequences can lead to growth, that being called out doesn't have to mean being cast out forever. Wishing you well, Maya Carter." She mailed the letter that afternoon. She didn't know if it was the right choice. She didn't know if grace was the same as weakness or if holding space for redemption meant compromising her standards. But she knew this. She'd built the Grand Meridian to be a place of dignity. And dignity meant recognizing the humanity in everyone, even those who'd failed to recognize hers. A year after that day in the lobby, Maya stood on stage at a hospitality industry conference. She'd been asked to give the keynote speech. The topic was leadership in challenging times. She looked out at the audience, hundreds of hotel managers, executives, owners. She thought about what to say. She could talk about profit margins, about expansion strategies, about market trends and competitive advantages. But that's not what they needed to hear. That's not what mattered. A year ago, she began, I walked into my own hotel with my son and was denied a room because I didn't look like I belonged there. The audience went quiet. She told them the story, every detail, every emotion, every consequence. She talked about the policies she'd implemented, the culture she'd built, the revolution that started with one honest conversation. Here's what I learned, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. Success means nothing if you build it on the backs of people you've dehumanized. Profit means nothing if you earn it by treating some customers as less worthy than others. Your brand means nothing if your values are just words on a website. She paused, looking at faces in the crowd. Some nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. Some were crying. I didn't fire those employees because I was on a power trip. I fired them because I refused to let my company become a place that forgets its mission. I refuse to build wealth at the expense of dignity. And I refuse to raise my son in a world where we accept discrimination as just the cost of doing business. She talked about the training programs, the policy changes, the measurable impacts on guest satisfaction and employee retention. She made the business case for decency, because apparently in this world you have to prove that kindness is profitable before people will invest in it. But here's the real question, she said, leaning into the microphone. What kind of world are we building? What kind of legacy are we leaving? When we die, will anyone remember our profit margins? Or will they remember whether we made the world a little bit kinder, a little bit more just, a little bit more human? The applause started before she finished. It swelled and rolled and filled the room like a wave. Maya stood there feeling the weight of it, the hope of it, the possibility that maybe things could actually change. After the speech, people lined up to talk to her, to thank her, to tell their own stories of discrimination and injustice, to ask for advice on implementing similar policies, to admit their own failures and ask how to do better. She stayed for 3 hours talking to every single person, because that's what this was about. Not grand gestures, but individual conversations, person by person, choice by choice, day by day. Jordan was 10 now, old enough to understand more, old enough to remember that day in the lobby. They talked about it sometimes, usually late at night when the world was quiet and truths came easier. Do you regret it? He asked once. Firing all those people? Making such a big deal out of it? Maya thought about it, really thought about it. No, she said finally. I regret that it happened. I regret that people I employed forgot what we stood for. But I don't regret holding them accountable. I don't regret teaching you that some things are worth fighting for. I don't regret showing you that power can be used to protect people, not just profit. Would you have done it if you weren't the owner? Jordan asked. If you were just a regular person with no power? It was a good question, a hard question. I don't know, Maya admitted. Probably not in the same way, but I hope I would have spoken up. I hope I would have reported it. I hope I would have refused to accept being treated as less than human. She pulled him close. That's the thing about power, Jordan. It's not just about what you can do. It's about what you choose to do. And when you have it, you have a responsibility to use it to make things better for people who don't. I want to be like you when I grow up, Jordan said quietly. Maya's eyes burned. I want you to be better than me. I want you to be you. But yeah, baby, if you grow up understanding that every person deserves dignity, that kindness is strength, that justice sometimes requires uncomfortable action, then I'll know I did something right. The Grand Meridian continued to grow. New properties opened, awards were won. the company became known not just for luxury, but for values, for walking the talk, for proving that success and integrity aren't opposites. Maya never forgot that day. She carried it with her, not as a wound, but as a reminder, a North Star, a promise to herself and to Jordan and to every person who walked through her doors that they would be seen, they would be valued, they would be treated like they mattered. Because they did. Everyone did. Years later, when people asked her about the turning point in her career, she didn't talk about the first property she bought or the expansion into new markets or the record-breaking revenues. She talked about the day she was denied a room in her own hotel, the day she chose consequence over comfort, the day she fired an entire staff to protect a principal. That was the day, she'd say, that I learned what I was really building. Not just hotels, but proof that we can do better, that we can choose better, that every day in every interaction, we're deciding what kind of world we want to live in. And the world listened, slowly, imperfectly, but it listened. Because Maya Carter, the single mom who built an empire on the foundation of dignity, refused to accept anything less than what every human being deserved: respect, kindness, the radical, revolutionary belief that we all belong. That day in the lobby, with her son's hand in hers and her worn duffel bag at her feet, Maya made a choice: not to walk away, not to accept the unacceptable, but to stand firm, to demand better, to use her voice and her power and her pain to build something that mattered. And in doing so, she didn't just change a hotel. She changed an industry. She changed lives. She changed the conversation about what success looks like when it refuses to abandon its soul. 9 minutes. That's all it took. 9 minutes from humiliation to justice. 9 minutes that proved that one person, standing for what's right, can shift the entire world. Not easily, not perfectly, but truly, really, powerfully. Maya Carter walked into that lobby as a tired mother seeking rest. She walked out as a force of nature, and the world would never be quite the same. So let me ask you again, where are you watching this from? Type your country in the comments. I want to know where this story reached you. I want to know that somewhere out there, someone heard this and decided to stand up for what's right, to treat people with dignity, to refuse to accept discrimination as just the way things are. Hit that subscribe button if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who works in hospitality. Share it with someone who's ever been judged. Share it with someone who has power and needs to remember what to do with it. Because Maya's story isn't just about one day in one hotel. It's about every day, every choice, every moment when we decide whether to see people or judge them, whether to stand up or stay silent, whether to build something that matters or just something that makes money. Choose better, be better, demand better. The world is watching, and it's waiting to see what you'll do.